Living well with MS means learning how to navigate uncertainty. Welcome to this week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. I'm John Strum, and I'm the host of the Real Talk MS podcast. Each week, Real Talk MS reaches thousands of people in more than 100 countries around the world with the news that people affected by MS need to know. My wife, Jean, lived with progressive MS for 23 years, so I've had a front row seat experiencing all the ways that MS can impact a family. Today, I'll be asking our expert the questions you want answered. Please feel free to post your comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. MS Navigators will be online throughout today's program, answering your questions and connecting you to resources. Finding peace in uncertain times involves acknowledging and processing your emotions. It includes focusing on what you can control to create mindfulness and connection with others. And it also means developing a sense of resilience and adaptability. Joining us today to talk about finding peace in uncertainty is Andrea Arts, a licensed social worker who has extensive experience working with people living with MS. Welcome, Andrea. Thanks for being with us today. I always like to start these conversations by getting definitions out of the way. So, how do you define navigating uncertainty? Well, what does that mean?
Well, it's a good question. For me, navigating uncertainty really means moving through situations when there's a lack of predictability or we're really uncertain about the outcomes. It involves adapting to changing circumstances, accepting the unknown, and making decisions when complete information is not available. Essentially, it's about finding a way forward when things aren't clear or guaranteed. Um,
Well, speaking of things that are not clear or guaranteed, how can a person living with MS stay grounded when the future can be so unpredictable?
yeah. Well, getting a diagnosis of MS is certainly one of those things we did not expect. Having MS itself creates uncertainty because we did not know that we don't know that we know that we cannot predict the course of the disease and how that disease will take for each course it'll take for each person. And of course, it's anxiety provoking. But there really are things someone with MS can do to reduce the anxiety and move forward. Um,
After experiencing a relapse and a new MS symptom, Crystal tells us she's thinking about changing her MS medication, but she's nervous that the new medicine might actually be worse. How might Crystal shift her mindset to better manage this sort of uncertain situation?
this is not an uncommon issue as we might expect. So one of the mindsets is for Crystal to just kind of remember that she can handle what comes because she's already done that many times. She's already handled many situations and knowns before her MS, when she received her diagnosis, starting her first medication, dealing with symptoms. So one change in her mindset can be acknowledging that she's stronger than she gives herself credit for, and that can go a long way in dealing with this new question and issue.
Dominic
Figuring it,
tells, oh, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Didn't
I'm
mean to
sorry.
interrupt.
Yeah, and I was just then figuring what is known and can be controlled for and what can not be is also really important. So in this case, finding out as much about the new medication as possible is really clear. Utilizing her healthcare providers to help her understand as much as possible, and using other reputable resources like the MS Society, support groups, and others with MS. All of these things can help her um, reduce some of the uncertainty and help her plan for what changes that might come.
We heard from Dominic, who tells us he lives with
Mhm,
primary progressive MS, and he feels his neurologist isn't being completely honest with him about what his future might be like.
mhm.
So I guess I have a two-part question for you on behalf of
Right.
Dominic. First, how transparent should doctors be when they're discussing uncertain outcomes with their patients? And what strategies could Dominic use to explain the importance of being honest with him to his neurologist, even when they're dealing with so many unknowns.
As we're discussing, dealing with the unknown, or at least those things about which we're uncertain, is a skill. And providers who are also human may not talk as clearly about what they are not as certain about as they should. The best practice for a provider is to be as transparent and honest as they can be with patients, what they do know, what they don't know. It's really the only way for patients to start to deal and plan with their providers and others in their support system for the contingencies. I guess in the second part of your question is I do have a couple suggestions for Dominique. One is let his provider know that he's wants to have a conversation about the future. And if not at the current appointment, but at the next one, this can help his provider be prepared too. And hopefully schedule enough time in his appointments to have such a discussion. Um, it can also help his provider really know that he's ready to hear about the uncertainties and to plan with him. He can think through his questions and concerns, write them down so they can be organized and he doesn't forget questions and concerns, and bring a friend or family member with him. So help him ask his questions. And he shouldn't be afraid to have this conversation more than once. Information changes, his provider's thoughts might change, and his questions might change.
Patty says she struggles to make decisions because she tries to think through all the possible outcomes and she ends up just running around in circles in her head. What's the best way for Patty to make decisions when she may not have all the information?
Well, one of the first things she can do is know that there is likely no one right answer. And that in itself can be anxiety provoking, and part of what keeps her going around in her head. Sometimes we spend so much time thinking, that we can and should know what the answer is that we tie ourselves up in knots. So she can focus on what is known and what feels like the best decisions for right now. And are there things that can help with some of the many contingencies, such as knowing resources, preparing her finances, looking at jobs that have more flexibility? Really, if there are, do those things. And know that as information changes and becomes known, that will be new information and decisions that can and will be made later. She can also practice techniques that can help reduce her stress, ruminating and not ruminate on what is not controllable. Again, she can also ask for help, mindfulness, stress management techniques. And if she keeps on going around and around, seeking help from others can really help her deal with some of this.
Katya's mother has had MS for over 35 years, and Katya constantly feels anxious about her mom's health and the care her mother might need in the future. How can Katya better manage her fear when her mother's outcomes are unknown?
Right. Well, one of the first things she can do is think and talk about her fears, including talking about her fears with her mother. Talking about what you're afraid about already starts you on the course for managing it, because what can be mentioned is manageable. And that can be really one of the first starts. She can then figure out what she and her mother are afraid of and what they can plan for and what they can't. And that really can start her in terms of managing the fears.
And how does that process help Katya build resilience?
Well, resilience is really learning that we can deal with what is coming our way, and really is learning how to do that. So again, by being able to talk about what she's concerned about and actually problem solving for what she can deal with now, all help her build resilience and help her build some flexibility, since she may need to make changes with her and her mother as some of the uncertainty becomes clearer and changes happen along the way.
Jameson tells us he was recently married and his new father in law lives with MS and uses a wheelchair. Jameson says he feels unsure of how to support his wife as her family's needs seem to constantly change. Are there strategies Jameson can use so that he can be a positive support partner through these uncertain times?
Of course. And one of the first things that he can do is let talk to his father-in-law and his wife and the family member to let them know that he wants to know and wants to be a support, so he can hear from them what will be the best supports for them. This does not have to be a guessing game. Again, really talking about it is almost always the first step. And then really being able to help problem solve and ask questions again as the situation changes. He also may find out in talking about it that what his wife needs might be different than what his father-in-law needs, and figuring out how to be the best support and what they need most as time goes on.
We've been talking about uncertainty in maybe negative terms,
Mhm.
but that doesn't always have to be the case. How can uncertainty lead to opportunities for personal growth or creativity?
Right. Well, we do tend to focus on the negative and what we might lose, but instead of focusing also on what we might gain. So, knowing that things might change and where we are right now may not be where we are in the future, which, by the way, is something we all need to deal with, but particularly when you have MS, gives us a time to rethink what our values are, what our goals are, what's important to us. Knowing that we may not be able to do one activity may lead us to exploring new thoughts, new activities, find new friends, be involved with new people, learn new things, both about the world and ourselves. So, all of that is a time for positive change and growth. So, again, uncertainty and just means change, a need for change, and not all change is negative. And I think we need to remember that.
So, could you share an example of how an uncertain experience might lead to unexpected success?
Well, um, I think if we're talking about someone who perhaps um, has an idea that they have always wanted to run a marathon, for example, and suddenly with MS and some changes in their fatigue or in their ambulation, being able to run the marathon in the best possible time may not be in the picture. But re-looking at it, what's important about that, what's important about finishing may allow them to learn how to do the marathon in a different way, to do it in more time, to see if they can do it with a different group of people. They may still be able to make it through that marathon, but it may be in a totally different way. Or maybe the marathon may not be the Boston Marathon, but it may be a reading marathon, or it might be a different kind of achievement goal, one that they hadn't really thought of before.
Are there any tools or frameworks to adopt when someone is dealing with uncertainty?
Um, well, there are lots of different tools that people can use. Certainly, journaling is one that a lot of people like to use. A journal can be a place to write your fears and concerns so that you can be clearer about what it is that you're really frightened about and help you sort of figure out what's so scary and what's so important. Journaling can also be a place to talk about what are the good things that may have happened in a day or over time, and to be able to focus on the positive, and not just on the negative. Scenario planning, sitting down with yourself and with others and really thinking about what happens if this happens, what will we do if that happens, and really thinking through what you have control over, what you can prepare for, what you can plan for, and what you can't, really helps people, in many ways, feel much better and much more in control and be more prepared for what comes. Mindfulness techniques and stress management techniques can also help someone focus on the here and now, and reduce their stress now, which both helps for planning, but helps you enjoy what you have at the moment. Sometimes we are so focused on the future that we forget to be here and now, and live our life that we have right now.
Well, are there professionals who can help people with MS manage and plan for the future?
Definitely, there are a wide variety of professionals that can be helping with that. Certainly, your healthcare providers, your doctors, your nurses can help you for planning for possibilities for symptoms or other changes that might come. Rehab workers can help you not only strengthen what you have now, but also plan for the contingencies that might come. What kind of tools or equipment might help you? Therapists, and other mental health workers can be there to really help you deal with your emotions, and sometimes help your family talk together about what's going on and help communication happen, and also help with problem solving. There are also financial planners, employment counselors, all who can help you think through what contingencies and plan for future possibilities.
Samuel tells us that he's always relied on logic to guide him, but he feels
Mhm.
less able to do so since he was recently diagnosed with MS. He feels like his body doesn't do what he tells it to anymore. So, how can Samuel balance logic with intuition when his health status is unclear?
Well, logic is usually based on facts and what you have and what you know, and can help you with specific planning. Well, our body not and the things that we don't know and our emotions, they just aren't always logical as much as we want them to be. So being able for him to be able to acknowledge both parts is a really important piece, and knowing that it's going to take both what he knows and his logic and his accepting, of his feelings and thoughts and what he doesn't know, and putting them together to build resilience and flexibility, are going to do him well. But it's going to take both parts, for him to deal with the future in the best way.
We've been talking about uncertainty, but let me ask you perhaps to help us understand the
Mhm,
difference between being uncertain and being unprepared.
mhm. Well, as we've been talking, uncertainty is knowing that there are things that you can't know about the future, that you can't predict. Being prepared, or unprepared, actually, is really not thinking about what you do know and what you don't know, and doing some of that scenario planning and putting in place what you can, so that you are as prepared as possible for some of the unknowns. The more prepared you are for what you can be, then the more flexible and able you will be able to handle those things that you hadn't expected, or you weren't sure was going to happen.
We heard from Monica, who leads a team
Mhm.
at an MS clinic, and she finds that the needs of the team and their patients are constantly changing. Monica finds herself constantly adapting to new situations. Can you talk about the role that flexibility plays in managing uncertainty?
Well, we'd said before with one of your other questions, healthcare providers have to deal with uncertainty, both with their patients and even the resources that they may have, or what changes in their knowledge about MS, as much as their patients do. So, healthcare providers and people living with MS both need to be flexible in, again, dealing with what they do know, using that knowledge, but also being able to change their plans as things change, both in a expected but also unexpected way. Learning to be flexible and being able to do that is actually a skill and takes practice. And people shouldn't be hard on themselves if they're not good at it in the beginning. But uncertainty continuing to come gives lots of opportunity to build that skill, to build that flexibility muscle. And MS certainly requires that of us.
Well, you've shared some valuable insights and some excellent tools that you can use
Mhm.
to find peace in uncertainty. Let me ask you, what would you say is the top takeaway that you'd like our viewers to remember and use?
First, we all deal with uncertainty, and that we can learn to build the skills and resilience to deal with the changes that come with MS and with life. Focus on what you do know and can change, and prepare for as many contingencies as you can. But know that you cannot know them all, and that's okay. It's not a lacking in you. It's something that we all must learn. Understand your strengths and that you're stronger than you think already, and then use techniques like mindfulness, gratitude journals, support systems to help you to stay positive and enjoy life in the here and now. Managing life in MS's uncertainty really takes flexibility. And again, these are skills that you can learn.
Thank you for being with us today, Andrea.
Mhm. Thank you for having me.
Today's program survey has now been posted in the chat for your feedback. Please take a minute and complete it to help us create programs and topics with you in mind. Please be sure to visit the National MS Society's website for information and resources on MS, connection opportunities, and ways for you to get involved. You can also connect with an MS Navigator to receive personalized support by phone, email, or through the Society's website by chat. A recording of today's program will be posted on the MS Society's website at nationalmssociety.org/msexpert, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. Finally, I'll invite you to join me each week on the Real Talk MS podcast, where we continue the conversation that we start here. You can find Real Talk MS on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Thanks for joining us for Ask an MS Expert. We'll see you next week.